Environmental Family, and the Environmental Family was founded in the 1980s by a group of environmentally aware Pacificans, and we were formally incorporated as an organization in 1998. Our mission is to promote the discovery of and caring for our wealth of natural resources, and we found over the years we can do that just in so many different ways. But I'm excited today to talk about citizen science. One of my very first introductions to citizen science was through an organization called Earthwatch. It's super to see so many different ways to do it now. At that time, it was just something that I came across at one point. And through that organization, you can go and take part in scientific research really around the world. And I was able to travel to 2 countries I've always wanted to visit. I met fascinating people and took part in assisting researchers in collecting data for their scientific projects. So my first trip took me to Fiji and the island of Mololo, where we charted how coral reefs were being rebuilt after a cyclone. And at that time, technology's really changed. At that time, all data was collected on paper, and we were standing in the water, so we had to write it on waterproof paper and on plastic, and then bring it in and key entry all of that information. My second trip in 1990 was to Kenya, or in 2003 was to Kenya, Africa. At that time, we were using Blackberries. If anybody remember Blackberries, one of the first little electronic devices, and we were researching black rhino habitat and how giraffes and black rhinos in the same enclosed reserve were impacting each other because they both eat acacia trees. So we were collecting data on black rhinos over a course of 2 weeks. At the end of each day, we would go and upload that data from the BlackBerry into a mainframe computer, and that would be used by the researchers. But now what's really cool is we don't have to travel around the world. We can do citizen science anywhere. So some of the things that are taking place in Pacifica that community members can take part in. An organization, another wonderful environmental organization, Surfwater, has their Blue Water Task Force. And you can take water samples, and what you do is they then get tested, and it helps inform policymakers and us as community members as far as what is in that water that we want to recreate in, from surfing to swimming, playing on the beach. What are the bacteria levels in there? So by having community members going out and taking water samples, that data is able to be collected and it's shared with government officials, because there's not enough people in the county or in the cities to do this type of work on their own. So by sourcing it out to the community, we're able to collect tons of data and hopefully make policy changes. I hope many of you, as people, heard of the app called iNaturalist. So I'll show you it on my phone if you come over to my table later. What's cool about iNaturalist is you can just go out when you're taking a hike or walking, and it helps you to take a photo and document the biology and the habitat, flora and fauna that's out in our community. And so researchers can then access that data and use it in studies they're doing. And you can also use that data to do advocacy work. As we know, there's a lot of projects going on, particularly here in Pacifica, where there's a lot of development projects, and they're looking at developing in open space. So having data as far as what other creatures are out there, what special birds, what special animals are out there, what are the flowers and things that are out there that might be endangered, that could be impacted if development was done in that area without us being aware of it, is why we're collecting that data and then using it. So as we're hearing through the environmental family, of projects that are going on, we ask people to go out and use iNaturalist and upload that information so that it's recorded. Biologists go out and do their own field studies, but this is a way that they can also document times when they're not there and to begin to look at things from a historical perspective. A project that we're doing here in town that we keep a little bit quiet so that not too many people go out there and impact it is in the Rockaway Beach area. Volunteers go out once a month at the lowest tide of the month. They lay transects, and we're conducting a count of sea stars. You may have heard about sea star wasting syndrome. And that's where the sea star population along most of the West Coast was almost wiped out. But what we've seen here in Pacifica is we actually have a very healthy population of sea stars that rebounded a lot quicker. But now we're looking at the data and collecting data about how they have come back in the tide pools at the base of Aramai Point here in Rockaway Beach. So the next slide, I do have a couple of slides here. This is something that everybody can do as well. It's through the California Coastal Commission, and it's the California King Tide Projects. We know about king tides, right? It's a great way to see the future because during king tide events, we're able to chart what the future may look like in areas when sea level rise continues to occur. So this is a project through the California Coastal Commission. I've been taking part of it for about the past 4 years. And at the highest king tide level of the year, you can go onto the app that they use. It's through a GIS survey tool that you can just log on to. You take pictures of what's going on and you upload it and put some information about the day in there. By using your phone when your data is turned on, you can capture the location of where you are, and that can then be pinned to maps. And it can help people begin to see what's going to happen with sea level rise. So it's a really simple thing that can take place several times a year when you're out. When everybody goes out here in town during king tides, there's a way where you can take that photograph and turn it into science and to share about what's happening. And it's a very easy tool to use. So that's one project you can do, the California King Tide Projects. Through the Coastal Commission, you can sign up and get emails, and they remind you about when the king tide is coming, how to find when it's the highest tide at your location, and how to use their upload tool. And then you can go later and see the map of what everybody has posted up and down the California coast. So next slide. A less tech project that's been taking place here in Pacifica over many years, over 10 years, is research on the western snowy plover. So our last snowy plover count was done on Tuesday, January 30th. This was through the winter window of timing when Audubon and a lot of organizations go out and collect data on the western snowy plover. So that's a group of us on the left there in that slide, a small group that went out together, walked in a line, and waited until we spotted snowy plovers. What we're looking at there in the slide where the people are is the footprints. So we were able to see the tracks of the snowy plovers on the beach, so we knew they were there. And as we moved forward, we were able to see the plovers on the beach, which is really hard to see because they live in little footprints and little divots. And there's some of the plovers that we documented. This study is done with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the government agency, and organizations up and down the coast do this. It's a paper tabulation. This is the data that we submitted for our count that day that included who was out there, the time of day we were, what the weather conditions were, how many plovers we saw, and what the other conditions were. Because people, off-leash dogs, that can all impact the number of plovers that we're seeing. So that all gets recorded, and ravens are there on the list because they can attack and eat snowy plover. So ravens are counted too. They're not typical birds at the beach. So that got added in over the years to what's being tracked. My next slide. Here's where we're going though. So we're looking at using this app, IC Change, to document climate change, and specifically what's going on along our coastline. The Environmental Family and some other organizations in town recently held a couple of talks on the Coastal Act, the Coastal Commission, and what should we be doing on our coast as sea level rises. And we need to be talking about what is our reaction going to be? How can we turn data into action? We have Dr. Charles Lester, who's with UC Santa Barbara right now. And at another talk, we had Professor Gary Briggs from UCSC. And while I was telling them about my anecdotal stories of living in West Sharp Park and seeing overtopping along the coast on a much more regular basis than when I first moved here over 25 years ago. And they looked at me and they said, "Are you documenting it?" No, I'm not. So right now I can just have memories that I'm sharing with people. But what we're going to be doing is setting up a very intentional project and asking community members when they're out walking along the coast, if they're seeing incidences of erosion, of wave activity, or other things happening on the coast, to begin tracking that and sharing not only photographs, but personal observations. So I have information at my table about all of that and the different websites, as well as our email list, and I hope you'll be able to join us. And we'll be posting our project when we get it fully together with SciStarter too, so that everybody is aware about what we're doing with these different things here in Pacifica.
Awesome. Thank you, Cindy. Woo, round of applause, everybody. Very exciting. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I just want to check in with the online people. Let us know if you're having any issues hearing us. We are here to support you. All right. So I'm actually going to present for a second. So as I mentioned, I'm going to turn the camera around so the online people can see me. Oh, well, I'll just move over here and I'll go back and forth. But yeah, it is April. It's Citizen Science Month. So find lots of things you can do. I think the opportunities that Cindy just spotlighted are all amazing ways to make your voice heard through science, to take action, to document our environment. One thing I always say about the environment and climate change is the first step is understanding the problem. And climate change, as we know, is hyper local. So the way I experience climate change might be different than my friend across town. Maybe I have more trees on my street, so I'm less likely to suffer the impacts of extreme heat. I'm less likely to have heat-related illnesses. Maybe my friend across town lives at a higher elevation, so they're less likely to experience flooding. So because climate change is so hyperlocal, the project I'm going to talk about, IC Change, is a really important one in terms of understanding the problem. All right, so let me go to my next slide. I also wanted to just give some quick slides about SciStarter. So you hear people use a lot of different terms for citizen science. They call it citizen science, neighborhood science, community science, participatory science. Ultimately, what we care about at SciStarter is it's just science. We want to make sure it's actual, real science. We don't want it to just be science education, which is great. I love learning about different scientific facts. I've been consuming all the Eclipse content I can. But what makes something citizen science is when you're actually collecting real data for researchers to use, or you're analyzing that data yourself. So I have some bookmarks outside on the table. One of the projects out there is called Stall Catchers, where you can, by playing an online game, actually make real annotations for Alzheimer's researchers. So that's pretty cool. You're doing the research yourself, right? You're becoming part of the crowd who's doing this analysis. And the All of Us Research Program, they're here today. You can actually participate in the back. They're doing the surveys, the blood draws for this really important precision medicine study, which you'll learn more about when my colleagues from PrideNet present. But you're actually contributing to real science by doing that. You're becoming part of a very important precision health study by, kindly submitting your data. So citizen science is when a member of the public is a meaningful part of the scientific enterprise. It's not just science education. I always like making that clear. So SciStarter, I know it's kind of complicated. I don't expect you to read this entire chart, but we help people all around the world find these projects. And if you run a project, like for example, Cindy runs a project, she can add it to SciStarter and find more volunteers. And if you're a volunteer, you can come to SciStarter, and let's say you're really passionate about healthcare, you could search health and the All of Us research program would pop up. So often you find a project on SciStarter and then you go somewhere else to do it. So I always like making that clear as well, because there's a whole ecosystem of science. I mentioned the Stall Catchers project. There's also this project called Globe at Night, where you can study light pollution in the night sky, which is a huge problem for human and environmental health. And you know, there are lots of eclipse projects too. I have some out on the table. So if you want to do some science and help NASA during the eclipse, you can. I'm the All of Us research program. They are a great partner here. I'm going to leave this link up on the slide so you know where to find this link later. If you're not ready to participate today, you can go to this later. If you're watching online, that's where you go. I wanted to make the link here between the environment and All of Us. So as you know, as the climate is changing, as we have different types of environmental problems, there are certain cancers that are linked to climate change, right? Let's talk about, like, as the world gets hotter, there are certain cancers that are linked to extreme heat. Someone from UCSF, Robert Hyatt, he presented with SciStarter for, and it was a few citizen science months ago, actually, but the recording's online, about climate change, the environment, and health. So the All of Us research program, because they're doing precision medicine, we're able to better understand different things like better cancer treatments, right? Which we can link back to climate change and the environment. So it all comes together. That's why the title of today's event is The Environment in All of Us. So, and also I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the sponsors of today's event who helped put all this together. The network of the National Library of Medicine, they have trainings and other free things for you online. And I mentioned those eclipse projects. I just threw that in there because I've seen people come in. I made this morning. People have been coming into the library nonstop for their eclipse classes. So I figured this would be a hit with this crowd. Okay, IC Change. So Cindy teed me up for this one. So this is actually my PhD work centers on IC Change in Florida, but it's a global citizen science project. And it basically turns anybody and everybody into a climate reporter. So what IC Change does is they ask you to just report what you see in your community. They want to leverage your lived experience. A thing that IC Change says a lot is you're the expert in your own backyard. So in Florida, I know if it's unseasonably hot. I know if it's unseasonably cold. I know if weather is strange for that time of year. I know if there's sunny day flooding on the sidewalk and it's not supposed to be there. I've never seen flooding on that sidewalk before. I can report it to IC Change. And you can also just report if it's a normal day, right? That's good data too. But I think what makes IC Change special is they're really zeroing in on the human impact of climate change. So I do IC Change a lot when I'm in Miami because they have a formal partnership with the city of Miami. You can do it from anywhere, but some municipalities like Miami, the city of New Orleans have had formal partnerships. They've made IC Change their go-to reporting system so they can target infrastructure improvements. So in Miami, when I see flooding on the sidewalk, I report it to IC Change. And I also write what I'm nervous about. I might say, I'm worried that my neighbors are going to slip. There's flooding on the sidewalk. There are a lot older folks in this neighborhood. It could be bad if they fall down. And then the city is able to know through that qualitative data, which is still a valuable part of science. Qualitative data matters. Qualitative data is words and pictures. Quantitative data are things like numbers and measurements, like temperature. They are able to take my qualitative data and figure out, okay, do we need different infrastructure improvements? Do we need different policies? What should we do about climate change based on this human-centered reporting? So you can do IC Change today. In fact, I challenge you to. And then if you post about it on social media and use the hashtag 1,000,000actsofscience, my boss will be really pleased with me. She really loves that hashtag, guys. I cannot emphasize that enough. But if you do IC Change today, you can just report what you see outside in Pacifica. It really could just be beautiful day today. Or if you observe different climate impacts, right? You could say, let's say you've been experiencing a drought. I don't know much about the weather in Pacifica or the climate impacts here, but you all do. That's the whole point. We're leveraging your own lived expertise. So you could say, we've been experiencing a drought, and I have some Chinese hibiscus plants outside my window. I'll post about those on IC Change because there's a period when it would be really hot one day and really cold the next. And this kind of back and forth weather is a sign of climate change when you have a big swing in temperatures out of nowhere. That's very strange. And my poor flowers, they didn't know what season it was. So they were blooming, but they were also turning yellow at the same time. Their leaves looked all wonky. So I would post about them. I would basically use my flowers as a barometer for understanding the climate impacts in my community. So I encourage you to be creative like that and look around your environment and become more connected to it. And if enough of you post, let's say you all get together and you say, we're all going to post about the same climate hazard. If enough of you do that, you can go to local leaders and you can advocate for different changes. That's the value of platforms like this. They collect data, and that evidence is very helpful. I'm speaking from experience when working with policymakers. So leverage free scientific platforms, citizen science projects for monitoring like this, and use them for your own work. As you can see, I have some, it's a little small, but I have some pictures on the slide of like flooding in Miami. That's a very busy street in Miami Beach, and it was just covered with water. So that was a great icy change observation. It's an app and a website. So for some of you who don't love smartphones, you can still post on the website. It's just a picture and a description of the climate impact you see. Super simple, super accessible. And then you can take action on it if you so choose. You can see here, we are able to group different instances of sunny day flooding in Miami and say, okay, this is an area of high impact here. A lot of people are making these reports. Data is power. So the more data we have, the better we understand the problem. So that was my soapbox there. There are lots of different ways that you can be involved in science and citizen science. So I encourage you all to be part of the Million Acts of Science this month, contribute to citizen science projects, participate in all of us. Stop by Cynthi's table and learn about different ways you can be part of science in Pacifica. Stop by our friends at the City of Pacifica and learn about their climate change work too. We got the Pacific Beach Coalition here as well. You can learn about what they do. There's so many different ways to be part of the scientific enterprise. I personally think it's very exciting. And we really want to celebrate you at SciStarters. Don't be shy about going to citizensciencemonth.org and reporting your act. All right. Well, that was me. I'm going to pass the mic now to Mari from PrideNet, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about this All of Us research program we've been hinting at. So let's switch mics. Oh, I think this one's a little better. Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, so my name is Mari Bahati. You can go back to the next slide.
Whoa.
So my name is Mari Bahati, and I'm Senior Community Engagement Specialist at PrideNet, based at Stanford University School of Medicine. PrideNet works with the All of Us research program. We also have a site at UCSF. We also have a site at the Los Angeles LGBT Center, and we have a good social media presence at All of Us LGBTQIA+. So if you want to find us on there, next slide. So just a little bit more about PrideNet. Again, as I said before, we are based out of Stanford University School of Medicine, and we are what's called a national community engagement partner for All of Us. We've been with them since 2017, and I came on in February of 2018, right before All of Us was launched nationally for everyone to sign up and start sharing their health information. And we focus, in our work with All of Us, we're focused on LGBTQIA+ community engagement across the country and also here locally. And we provide technical assistance for All of Us. So we provide trainings to make sure that people know how to work with people in our community. We also review a lot of the surveys to make sure that they reflect the diversity of our identities and people in our community as well. So at the bottom of the slide, you'll see it says PrideNet. One of our taglines is that we're catalyzing LGBTQ+ health research. So since it's Citizen Science Today, so people might remember that catalyst is something that accelerates a scientific or a chemical reaction. And so that's what we're wanting to do with health research for LGBTQIA+ people, and why we partner with All of Us. So just to get us all on the same page, talking about what health research is, this definition is pretty simple, and it just shows that it's really just the process of finding new things about how to improve people's health care. So again, we're talking about sharing our information, we're talking about taking power of our healthcare, but part of that is, again, sharing our information with researchers. So we've also heard today, Caroline mentioned precision health and precision medicine. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and then also tie into what other people have talked about today with environmental health. So precision medicine is an emerging approach to treating diseases where you take into account differences in people's lifestyle, their environment, and their biological makeup. So part of how this fits in with all of us and why we're here today is that you can share your information, take surveys with all of us. You can also share your biosamples and your genetic information. You can also share your electronic health record information. And basically what that allows researchers to do is to use those characteristics to generate new knowledge about how to make treatments that can be tailored, as you see here, to the right individual, the right treatment for the right person at the right time. So when we think about environmental health, do many people in here is everybody from Pacifica or most of the rooms are in Pacifica? I drove from across the bay. I live near Hercules, but also I live by the water in a neighborhood that has a shoreline park, and I'm able to walk my dog every day. That helps me get exercise, but not everyone lives in that kind of neighborhood. Some people live in neighborhoods that don't have parks, or maybe they don't have grocery stores, or maybe they don't have necessarily a built environment that helps people get physical activity, or maybe the water has pollution in it or something like that. So all of these things are a part of our health and they interact with our genes and our lifestyle, where maybe we know, I don't live in a neighborhood that has trails and places to exercise, so I'm gonna go to this place. That's where our lifestyle comes into play, interacting with our environment and our genes. And so basically, by being a part of all of us, you're sharing all this information so that scientists can use these characteristics that make each of us unique, because all of us in this room had a different path that got us here today. We live in different neighborhoods, but we're all here today. And basically, a scientist can come in there and look at all of our unique stories and see how that can generate new knowledge and new treatments tailored to each one of us. Next slide. So just to talk about what is the All of Us Research Program, it is what I like to say historic effort to gather data from 1 million or more people that reflects the whole diversity of the United States. And again, to accelerate health research and really enable us, when we go to the doctor, to get individualized prevention, treatment, and care. One thing I usually talk about on the previous slide, the closest thing you can probably think to precision medicine is eyeglasses. And a lot of people in the room have eyeglasses on, but you know that you probably can't switch your eyeglasses to the next person and they're going to be able to see perfectly, because you went to the eye doctor and they took an exam and they said, this is the prescription that you need for your eyes. And it might even be different from eye to eye. So hopefully, by being a part of all of us, all of medicine is going to go in that direction. So if you do go to the doctor and you have cancer or you have some other health condition, they can know based on your genes, your lifestyle, et cetera, what treatment works for you. Next slide. So how does all of us do this? They're nurturing relationships with, again, 1 million or more people to build the largest, richest biomedical resource ever. So they wanted to reflect the diversity of the United States and of America. So they've made very specific efforts to include communities like my community of LGBTQI+ people. They've made concerted efforts to make sure that people over 50 are a part of health research. People of Hispanic and Latin background, Asian, American Pacific Islander people, people living with disabilities. They're putting a lot of resources and funding to make sure that this database has everybody in it, because we all need healthcare. And again, if we want to take all of the factors of who we are into consideration, we all have to be a part of this. And it's going to be something that happens over time and for many years to come. So they go about it very differently to make sure that it's not just a one and done, but how can you have a relationship with this program that that just builds that strong relationship and lasts. Like, so some of the kind of questions that all of us can answer, you can see here on the side. Maybe questions about how to potentially stop different kinds of dementia. Well, of course, you have to have people of a lot of different ages and follow them over time to be able to answer that question again. So even though you donated or some, did your biosamples today or got started, all of us wants to build that relationship with you that lasts over time. And some other questions that you see on here are like pain medicine and how to find pain medicines that maybe aren't addictive. Again, these are things that I think that's one of those from my doctors, and we've seen the effects of these. So again, just being part of this historic effort is going to accelerate those changes. So my question to people in the audience is really, who wants their providers to give solutions and treatments that are specific to them? I think most of us would answer yes to that question. As we go to the doctor and we say, like, I am African American and I'm transgender, that's my personal story. What can you tell me about my health and how I'm going to age and how I'm going to do these things? I want to be able to get that information from my doctor. But again, because research hasn't always included people like me or people, again, over 50 or in other groups, they haven't been able to answer this question because sometimes some medicines don't work well in people with specific ethnic backgrounds, et cetera. And so it's time that we're all a part of this national effort to change the medicine, change medicine. Next slide. And so this next slide shows some of the core values of all of us, that it's open to interested individuals. Again, some of the things I've mentioned, it reflects the diversity of America, and they're really partnering with individuals. It's not just, you think of the white lab code and you go there and you never see the people again, you don't know what they did with their information. All of us is committed to really returning value back to people who share their information with them. And also ensuring that you know that your data is secure and that you trust what happens with your health information, and you know that it's kept private, and you also have access to it when you want to get access to that information. So how does this lead to discoveries? So you can share your data with all of us. Again, in the back there, taking, you can get your biosamples. You can also get on it online and take health surveys. And one of those health surveys is the Social Determinants of Health Survey, which does ask questions about your neighborhood, whether your neighborhood has parks, whether you feel safe in your neighborhood, all these things that contribute to health and physical activity. And your data are protected. Again, people can't access any of your personal information, although the information that you share is going to be available to researchers. They won't be able to find out exactly who you are. Again, it's just wanting everyone to know how secure it is that everyone shares that information. And you also can share, what you want to share. Maybe you don't want to answer the Social Determinants of Health Survey. That's all up to you, or maybe you can participate to your level of comfort. So, and again, as I shared before, you have access to information about your health as you share it with all of us. It's not that you share your information and you never see it again. You can get some ancestry information back from all of us, which a lot of people pay for, but you're able to get there with all of us if you share your information, amongst many other things. And then what happens after that is that researchers are able to look at your information, and you're going to hear from my colleague, Kaori, about how we've been using information from all of us to do research. And then again, researchers are going to share those discoveries back, and that's how it's going to make it back down to where you can go to your healthcare provider and they can use some of these breakthroughs to help you. So you mentioned many ways, again, how to get started. If you're here in the room, you can sign up, but also there are apps that you can get online on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. So definitely, if you're watching from online and you want to get started, that's one way to get started. And the next slide. And if you're really interested in what we do at PrideNet and at Stanford University, this QR code and this bit.ly link is how you can sign up for our newsletter. We do other research as well, and we share all of our research updates through our newsletter and on our social media. So if you want to know what's coming out of all of us, especially related to LGBTQIA plus health, definitely follow us online. And thank you.
Woo! Thank you so much for presenting, and then we're gonna have Kobe come up. All right. Fantastic.
I'm Gallery. I'm a clinical research coordinator based at UCSF, working for Dr. Nisa Fungi, who is the UCSF site, who is the UCSF site director for Pride City, and I work with Mari and PrideNet as well. And so today I'm going to be talking about kind of our research looking at substance use, or in other words, drug and alcohol use within the All of Us research program. And our team's work is really specifically interested in LGBT health, because for a long time, LGBTQIA plus people were stigmatized in mental health research and healthcare and excluded from that work. And so as a part of kind of correcting that, we're really interested in the social and environmental influences on the health and well-being of LGBTQIA plus people. And so just to shout out our funders, this work is funded by the National Drug Abuse and the Office of Women's Health Research at the NIH, among others. And yeah, we just want to thank All of Us participants, because as Mari said, very important to be able to answer these. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this study, our primary research question was looking at the differences in alcohol and cannabis use among LGBTQIA plus and non-LGBTQIA plus populations within the All of Us research program. So, one thing that prior research shows is that LGBTQIA plus people have higher rates of drug and alcohol use, likely connected to experiences of discrimination. And as I mentioned in the past, sexual orientation and gender were not always collected in this research. So all of us kind of gives us the opportunity to look at experiences of drug and alcohol use because of the large number of participants within this program and the intentional outreach among LGBTQI plus population. And our hope is in kind of understanding how different communities are facing drug and alcohol disparities. We can make better decisions in treating and providing support systems for folks. And so, next slide. So in the All of Us research program, we use the online surveys, specifically, there's one survey which asks about drug and alcohol use, and the social determinants of health survey that Marty mentioned to look at alcohol and cannabis use among LGBTQI plus people and compared to cisgender and heterosexual populations. And just since I'm throwing out actual terms, if folks don't know, the term cisgender kind of refers to the experience of having a gender identity that aligns with what sex assigned at birth, for instance, like on your birth certificate, and heterosexual refers to people who identify as straight. In this study, we were looking at alcohol and cannabis use among subgroups of based on sexual orientation and gender identity, and comparing alcohol and cannabis use among these groups, and seeing how experiences of discrimination might change those differences and disparities. So, when looking at alcohol use, we found that transgender and gender diverse people assigned female at birth had lower alcohol use compared to cisgender heterosexual women. And all other LGBTQIA plus groups and cisgender heterosexual men had more alcohol use than cisgender heterosexual men. When looking at cannabis use, we found that all LGBTQIA plus subgroups had increased odds of past 3-month cannabis use than cisgender heterosexual men, with no significant difference between cisgender So in this kind of question of how discrimination might relate to substance use, specifically in this case, alcohol and cannabis use, we looked at, we first found that discrimination did significantly impact alcohol and cannabis use in these subgroups. And then in this graph here, you're going to see we looked at what alcohol and cannabis use looks like across levels of discrimination. So in that lower horizontal axis, in each of the box, that represents like increasing levels of discrimination. And then in the vertical axes, you're going to see that's alcohol use score. So as an example, we generally found across alcohol and cannabis use that increasing discrimination changed the difference between in alcohol and cannabis use, but in terms of alcohol use, as you can see in these graphs, each box represents a different subgroup, and so folks in the room with this text might be small. On the far right, that box is for cisgender heterosexual. So you'll see that there was an increase in alcohol difference in alcohol use as discrimination increased, but that increase is relatively smaller in comparison to the LGBTQI+ subgroups. And the strongest increase in differences in alcohol use we saw among transgender and gender diverse folks. So on the far left, my left, you're going to see that, like you mentioned, transgender folks and gender diverse folks have lower alcohol use compared to cisgender women at low levels of discrimination, but that difference went away at higher levels of discrimination. And among transgender and gender diverse folks assigned over, that difference as discrimination increased widened. And so kind of the so what of all of this is that, firstly, I think it's very common in research for us when we're comparing, we say like LGBTQI+ folks versus cisgender diverse people. And so what this shows is that being able to look at the different communities within that sort of umbrella is really important because alcohol and cannabis use is different among each of these subgroups. This also shows that discrimination as it increases changes our substance use behaviors. And so thinking about risk factors and what support systems people need, not only for coping with discrimination, but also later behaviors like substance use. This kind of data could help us make more informed choices about this. And so kind of as a next step, our goal is to continue to understand how discrimination, stigma, and kind of structural inequities influence substance use disparities among LGBT. And so with that, that's kind of our preliminary results. We'll be working on a publication later at Exodus, which we hope will come out shortly. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah, thank you all for your time.
Woo! And then last but certainly not least, we're going to hear from our friends at the City of Pacifica, and then we'll turn off the live stream and just take questions. So here you go. If you want to get in the camera frame over there.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Guys, thanks for being here. Thank you for inviting us. My name is Kim, and I am a citizen, a resident of Pacifica, who has embarked on this journey with the City Council. We are a group of 11 citizens who have been appointed by the Pacifica City Council to update the 2014 Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. So 11 of us make up the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Task Force. There's 3 of us here today. I'm here with Rick and Carl, who helped to get us on your panel this morning. So again, thank you. 3 of us are here to represent community outreach and engagement. And we really just want to let you know that we are in existence here. We are an active task force, and we are seeking input from the community. So if there are Pacifica residents among us here today we want your input in this process. The city council wants your input in this process. We've got some information on our table. We have a copy of the 2014 Climate Action Plan for Pacifica. We are charged with updating the 2014 plans. We have a copy of that plan. Let's see, our goals, in addition to updating the plan, primary goals are to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have some progress, some levels of progress available. Some prior goals were to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 35% between 2005 and 2020, and 80% below 2005 levels by 2050. So we are in the process of updating progress. We've gotten a lot of work done. We have a lot more work to do. Let's see here. Part of the reason the city council has decided that now is a good time to do this is that in recent years, local environmental groups here in Pacifica have urged the city to update this document with renewed targets, inventories, and strategies. Let's see, we are charged with defining the scope of the plan, analyzing the city's current and forecasted greenhouse gas emissions, formulating initiatives to reduce emissions, and present a draft of plans for the city council adoption. The task force is expected, and we do meet monthly. We could run for up to 18 months, or when the city council does adopt the climate action and adaptation plan. We did begin mid-year 2023, so we are, we're quickly approaching 1 year mark. Let's see, just a little bit more information for, in case anybody is wondering, we are working within the RICAPS program, and RICAPS is the Regional Climate Action Planning Suite program. RICAPS does support 20 cities in San Mateo County, and the county, we're working together with the county to plan and implement measures to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and plan for climate change adaptation. So we've got more information on that. We are being supported by RICAPS, which is excellent. We've got plenty of information on the table. We are hoping to get any input. If anybody has any ideas, we want to know what they are. And other than that, thanks again. We really just want you to know what we're up to, and hoping that you will join us in this process. Thank you so much.
Woo! Thank you. All right. So I'm going to say goodbye to our friends on Zoom.